With CTV's Colton Praill. Good morning to you, Colton. So we heard our colleague, Mike LeCouture, asking Steve McKinnon about this budget, saying, you know, austerity is not something that Canadians were expecting when they went to the ballot box last April. So talk to us more about that and the Liberals' position. Have things changed since last spring's election campaign?
Yeah, they absolutely have changed. But to Mike's point, this is a government that campaigned on the idea of spending less and investing more. And we heard directly from the Prime Minister yesterday that the deficit will be, in his words, substantial, that it will be larger than what we saw in the last fiscal year under Justin Trudeau, that they will have to make tough decisions, in the words of Steve McKinnon on our own show, CTV Power Play. Question period. You know, all of those are not necessarily aligned with the kind of campaigning that we saw from this Liberal government in the springtime. And some of that expenditure, take, for example, the majority of the Build Canada homes, $13 billion that Mark Carney announced yesterday, is going to go into this government's category of investment. But that is into the nitty-gritty. It's into the minutia of the way that they are divvying up the budget into a new form of accounting of capital or operating spend and investment. And that is, you know, in some ways, it's shifting the goalposts of what the mathematics are. And so it is fair to ask this government whether or not Canadians voted for this amount of spending, whether or not the decisions that they're going to be making in this budget to try to rein in some of that spending, to try to lower the overall cost to Canadians, are going to impact them. This government has said it's going to be caps, not cuts to the public service, but we know they're finding 15% savings in the public service in each federal department over the next 4 years. All of these things have carryover impacts. And so that is going to be such a large focus in this session of Parliament. What is the cost of the spend that we've seen, of the impact of tariffs, of the increased defense spending, of the new investments this government is making in the defense industrial sector, but also in infrastructure projects and in builds like Build Canada homes? All of that comes with a cost. It comes with trade-offs. What is it going to be for Canadians? That's going to be a huge conversation that takes place over the next several months, and I would expect it starts in a few hours in the House behind me.
I want to ask you also about a theme that emerged from McKinnon's question period with reporters, questioning with reporters, and that was really about collaboration. And he said, you know, Pierre Poilievre needs to drop the gimmicks and the slogans, you know, get down to business. That's what Canadians want. Anything that you have seen or heard so far from the leader of the opposition, Colton, that indicates there will be a different playbook for him once he's face-to-face with Mark Carney in the House of Commons?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I was at his caucus retreat yesterday where he spoke to his MPs, and of course members of media were in the room, and he spoke about this collaboration as well, very specifically highlighting that, in his words, the Conservatives will work together on areas where they believe they can cooperate with government and advance Canadian interests, but they will oppose ideas that they don't believe are successful, and they will present their own solutions. Those were the three criteria that he highlighted. But he was also very, very clear that he felt the Conservatives had worked with government in the spring session of Parliament because they saw the severity of the moment we were in with the United States, with the trade war, with the potential harms to the Canadian economy. And he was very clear that they had worked with government at that point in time because they were seeking the best result for Canada. But, and it was a very significant but, it's been 6 months, and he shifted very quickly from we chose to work with government then to now we have to hold Mr. Carney to account for his actions that don't always measure up to his words. That was how Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre framed their next session of Parliament, this upcoming session that starts today. That's how he framed the Conservative mission. And so there may still be an opportunity to collaborate on areas where these two parties are aligned. You know, crime might potentially be an opportunity there, given that both of them are planning on bringing in bail reform bills. However, we are still going to see pushback. We are still going to see the Conservatives saying a Liberal solution doesn't go far enough. You need to follow our ideas. You know, a disagreement on what the best way forward is. And it'll be very interesting to watch how this goes forward, because most Canadians are not looking for an election right now, but this is still a minority government, as Steve McKinnon pointed out. They will need assistance from either the NDP, the Bloc, or the Conservatives to get major things like their budget passed in the House of Commons.
Colton Praill for us. Colton, stay close. We might come back to you. Thanks so much for that. We want to turn elsewhere.